We talked about the meaning of jihad yesterday, and since the Quran ties the concept of jihad with guidance and goodness, hidayah and ihsan, we can understand that jihad is a comprehensive concept and it is not limited to a military struggle. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Those who strive in our path, those who struggle in our path, we will guide them to our ways, to our sabil, or plural, subul. The next step of our discussion is to understand that not only is jihad a non-military struggle, but jihad in the Quranic logic must be a non-military struggle. And that is because the Quran changes the meaning of certain words or the usage of certain words from what we are commonly accustomed to. And it is that changed meaning that comes in the Quran that refers to a deeper reality. So when the Quran uses a word in a way that is different from common custom, then that is because it is trying to raise our understanding of the reality of our existence. And two of those words that the Quran uses are dhulm and the opposite of dhulm, which is adl. Normally, you and I, in common speech, we use the word dhulm to refer to somebody who acts with injustice to others. And we use the word adl or adala to refer to acting with justice to others. So if I am a person who does not pray, does not fast, does not do other things which a Muslim considers to be obligatory. However, if I am able to be fair between my friends and my enemies, if a friend and an enemy of mine have a dispute and they come to me for advice or for judgment, if I am able to listen to both sides and speak fairly and impartially without giving preference to my friend, without trying to punish my enemy for no reason, then we will normally say that person is just because they acted externally in the world with justice. And similarly, if I am a person who acts unkindly towards others, we will say the person is unjust. That's the common usage, and that's not entirely wrong. But the Quran changes, or I should say refines that understanding to say that justice and injustice are not primarily about what you do to others or what you do in the external world, but rather they refer to how you are in your own soul and how you act towards yourself. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam defines justice as putting everything in its proper place, and injustice as not putting things in their proper place. And therefore, before I can think about what is the proper place for anything in the external relationships I have in the world, I have to know what is the proper place for my own soul itself. And the greatest injustice is to sell myself short. As Imam Ali also says, you have been created for paradise. So don't sell yourself for a price less than paradise. Don't try to sell yourself for the short pleasure of alcohol or gambling or the wealth you may acquire from dishonesty or stealing, that is to sell yourself cheap. So injustice is not primarily about putting things in the improper place in the external world, but putting them in the improper place within my own soul. And the reason for that is that the greatest injustice that I can do in the external world is a limited injustice of this world. But the injustice that I can do to my own soul is one that is eternal, and it can deprive me of salvation. The most harm that I can do to you as somebody who is evil, as somebody who is cruel, as somebody who is unjust, is I can deprive you of what is your right in this world. God forbid, I can take away your property or I can take away your life. But whatever the injustice, no matter how long it lasts, no matter how severe it is only limited to this world. I cannot affect your salvation in the hereafter. Because even if I am unjust to you, even if you are persecuted, even if you are in financial difficulty, in an insecure situation, if you are of good character, if you are morally upright, then you are still able to receive the mercy of Allah and you are able to achieve salvation and success in the hereafter. So I cannot prevent you from achieving salvation and success and going to paradise. The most I can do if I am unjust, اقضِ ما أنت قاض, I can cause you, as the believers said to the unjust kings and tyrants of their time, as the magicians said when they had accepted faith to Fir'aun, all you can do is you can judge the affairs of this world, but in the hereafter you have no power. So the injustice that we can do in respect to others, it's terrible, it's a very big crime to be unjust, but it is limited to this world. But the injustice that we do to ourselves is eternal. And therefore, if we define injustice as to put things outside of their proper place, as Imam Ali alayhi salam did, the greatest injustice is what we can do to ourselves. Because we can take our soul out of its proper place for eternity. We cannot do that for anyone else. And another reason why the inside is more important is because any action that we do in the external world, it has its origin in our internal state. So if I do injustice to others, then that is an expression of my anger or my lack of discipline or my foolishness or my jealousy or some other weakness within my soul. And if I am able to act justly to others, then that is going to be a reflection of the goodness of my soul. Now, it is possible to be just to others without being good in my soul, but that will be a superficial justice. Let's say, for example, that I am wealthy and I give other people their share of profit if we are in business together, of inheritance if, for example, my siblings and others are to have a share in the inheritance that belongs to all of us, I give them their share. But if I am in difficulty, if I am in poverty, if I have been oppressed in the past by that other person, if I have a way of cheating them with nobody knowing, and I still am going to be honest, then that deeper kind of honesty and justice is only possible if I have developed a certain quality within my soul. Superficial justice is easy when everything is going well, when you are not going to suffer because of being fair, then it's easy to be fair. But when you are going to suffer because of your justice, when nobody can catch you if you are unjust, then to still be just, that requires an inner justice. That doesn't just show up on the outside. So for evil to be eradicated, for justice to be established, not just in times of abundance, but even in times of hardship and trial, it has to come from within. And that is why Islam has defined dhulm and adl first and foremost with respect to the soul, because that is the greatest justice or injustice that you can do for all eternity. And because that is the source of any justice or injustice that exists in the external world. That makes clear to us that this is a redefinition of the common usage of dhulm. Zalim is a person who is unfair to him or herself. And even if a person commits a crime against another person, they have done an injustice to that person that is a crime. But the injustice they have done to themselves is even greater than that which they have done to others. And when I do good to others, then the favor that I have done to myself is greater than the favor that I have done to them. I shouldn't feel superior to others. I have done good to myself. This is why in Islam, adil refers to a person who is upright and not just a person who is just in their interactions. We say it is a requirement in Islam for a witness in court to be adil. It is a requirement in Islam for the leader of prayer, Salatul Jama'ah, Imamul Jama'ah, to be adil. That we sometimes translate that in English as just, but what we mean by just is upright, meaning they should respect their own soul and want to put their soul in the proper place and be conscious of their duty to Allah. Of course, in order to be adil, you not only have to be careful of your worship, you also have to be fair with other people. Both of them are a component of justice or uprightness, but it starts from within. And similarly, dhulm is to be unjust. The greatest dhulm is shirk. That is a dhulm azim, a great injustice, which doesn't necessarily affect other people directly. Eventually, it does cause harm to society as well, but it is an injustice that I do to myself. So when the Quran says, for example, in the story of Prophet Ibrahim being made an imam and a leader for people, إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. That when Allah says to Prophet Ibrahim that, "Oh Ibrahim, I am going to make you an imam of people." And Prophet Ibrahim says that, what about my descendants? وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي. And Allah says, "La yanalu ahdi al-zalimin." O Ibrahim alayhi salam, my covenant cannot include those people who are unjust. What does unjust mean here in La yanalu ahdi al-zalimin? It refers to those people who are sinful, who have the sin of polytheism, or who have the sin of not worshiping Allah, not fulfilling their obligations, or who have the sin of being unkind to others. We see here in the Quranic usage, dhulm is a comprehensive concept that begins from within and not in our relationship to other people. Because when a person is going to be an imam, the meaning of an imam is somebody who is responsible for a leadership of humanity and a role model, to be a role model for humanity. How is it possible to be a role model if you yourself have not adopted the highest level of character? That is why the imamat was given to Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam after he had been chosen by Allah as a messenger, a prophet, and this was at the end of his life. Because of course, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam did not have dhurriyyah and children until the end of his life. That is the context that the pledge of Allah, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا, I am making you an imam for people. This is at the end of the life of Prophet Ibrahim. قَالَ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي, Ibrahim alayhi salam said, Allah, I have my descendants. Ismail and Ishaq alayhim salam had already been born. And so this is why Prophet Ibrahim asked about them. And Allah says, قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Those who are zalim in the Quranic sense cannot be part of my covenant. They can't be a role model for people. A role model is not referring to dhulm in a government. The children of Prophet Ibrahim were prophets. They were a'imma. They were not kings. Aside from Dawood and Sulaiman, alayhim salatu wassalam, the role of the imamat, which was in the descendants of Prophet Ibrahim, was first and foremost a matter of religious guidance and being a role model for people. So dhulm refers to injustice. Similarly, in the Quran, many times Allah says, those who are evildoers, وَمَا ظَلَمُونَا وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. They were evil and unjust to themselves. They were not evil or unfair to Allah. They could not do anything wrong or harm Allah. They harmed. كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. They harmed themselves. So dhulm is injustice to oneself. Adl is justice to oneself. Now, let's move one step further. There is a distinction in the Quran between the usage of dhulm and the usage of adl. In the Quran, as I mentioned in these two verses and other verses, dhulm is often used to refer to injustice against oneself. Kanu anfusahum yadhlimun. They were unjust to themselves. La yanalu ahdi dhalimin. The covenant of Allah cannot include, imamat cannot include those who are unjust to themselves. And the injustice to others is part of that injustice to yourself. But adl in the Quran is used for justice to others. لا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على أن لا تعدلوا. Do not let hatred of a people, your hatred for them or their hatred for you, cause you to be unjust. Unjust here means unjust to them. اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. Be just. This is closer to piety, to taqwa. So justice, ala Allah ta'adilu, or i'dilu, this is referring to your justice with regard to and other people, especially those who are your enemies. Be fair. And this is a very beautiful point with regard to our ability to practice this Quranic teaching. In principle, adl and dhulm are two sides of the same concept. That's why Imam Ali says, if I have defined justice for you, I have defined injustice for you. If justice is to put everything in its proper place, injustice is to put things not in their proper place. So in practice, we should say that if dhulm refers primarily to internal injustice, adl refers primarily to internal justice. And if dhulm refers to external injustice, then adl should refer to external justice. In principle, that is what we would expect. But why is the Quranic usage different? This is because as a person who is trying to implement this teaching, there is a difference between a prohibition and a command. For a prohibition, just to have one blanket word is enough for me to be able to apply that teaching. If Allah says to me, wine is haram and forbidden, that's enough for me to avoid all kinds of wine. Expensive wine, cheap wine, red wine, white wine, whatever other types of wine there might be. Just for Allah to say wine is prohibited, that's all I need to know. I can apply that teaching with relative ease. But if Allah says, pray. Now, I can pray awwalul waqt or akhirul waqt, at the beginning of the time, at the end of the time. I can pray in the best state, or in a medium state, or in a rush and without good focus. When it's a prohibition, just for me to have a blanket prohibition allows all of the examples of what I need to avoid to be included. But when it is something affirmative that I must do, then it helps to have more detail. What is because I have to create that prayer. And I can create that prayer, I can do that prayer in the best way, or in a mediocre way, or in the worst way, but that is still valid. So for me to know how to pray best, it helps to have additional information to understand what are the signs, what are the qualities of the ideal prayer. And similarly, when it comes to dhulm, for Allah to say dhulm starts from within your heart, avoid all dhulm. When I do not pray, that is dhulm. When I do not fast, that is dhulm. When I am unkind to you, that is also dhulm against myself. When I steal from somebody else, that is also dhulm against myself. So it's clear you need to avoid all of them. But when it comes to adl, to do what is good, in principle, the same reality is there. To be good to myself, I should pray. And I should also be kind to other people. But because there is such a great obligation I owe to Allah, that it is easy to have attention to Allah and to forget that in addition to huququllah, the rights that I owe to Allah, there are also huququl ibad. There are also the rights of other people. Because Allah is so important to me, He is my creator, He is my Rabb and my sustainer, my focus and my attention to Allah might distract me from the other examples and extensions of adl. So the Quran reminds us that although adl is the opposite of dhulm, and it still has to begin from within your heart in order to be true justice, in order to be long-lasting and a well-established justice. But the Quran reminds us, i'dilu huwa aqrabu lit-taqwa, be just in dealing with other people. This is the extension of justice, because here it is an affirmative action, not a prohibition, that we can just avoid all examples with one word, but we have to affirmatively know how to practice justice, how to implement justice. And so it is important for us to know that in addition to our fulfillment of our obligations to Allah, we also have to honor those teachings of Allah that apply to our fellow human beings. And so the Quran uses the word adl to refer to our social relationships as well. In a sense, the Quran is reminding us that huququllah include huququl ibad. The rights of Allah include the rights of other people, because it is through the command of Allah that I have to honor my spouse, that I have to honor my parents, that I have to honor my children, that I have to honor my fellow human beings, Muslims and non-Muslims, and so on, that I have to honor the environment and even be just and merciful to animals and to plants and to anything that exists, anything that is a creation of Allah. So we said that dhulm begins from within, adl begins from within. And that is how they are used in the Quran. Of course, with adl, the Quran does use it to refer to external adl and justice, and the reason for that might be that it helps us understand the totality of adl to emphasize the social component of justice. But in reality, both of them in the Quranic logic begin from within. So with that introduction, the concluding point, this is why jihad cannot be a military struggle in Islam. When the Quran and Islam define dhulm as starting from the battle in your heart, adl as starting from the battle within your heart, jihad is nothing but a struggle against dhulm and a struggle for adl. If dhulm and adl are primarily in the external world, then jihad is also going to be in the external world, because jihad is the struggle against dhulm and for adl. If I believe the greatest injustice is political, then my struggle for justice will be a political struggle. If I believe the greatest injustice is economic, then my struggle to establish justice will be an economic struggle, a class struggle, maybe a Marxist struggle or a socialist struggle. But if I believe that the greatest injustice is spiritual and is inward, then my struggle for justice, even when I want political justice in the external world, even when I want economic justice in the external world, when I want gender justice and I want class justice in the external world, because I see that battle as being spiritual, I will begin from myself and I will rectify myself. Then I will try to improve the external world. And this is why we find that the Quran has used the word jihad as our affirmation of adl and our opposition to dhulm. When dhulm and adl are spiritual and internal, jihad by necessity must be internal. It cannot be an external struggle, because if it were an external struggle, then jihad would not be that complete battle in favor of justice and in opposition to injustice. And that is the encapsulation of the Islamic understanding of jihad. The true battle for justice occurs within the heart of each and every human being. And that is where our attention should be focused and where we need the greatest effort. And if we do that, then we will be able to be advocates for justice and we will be able to establish justice throughout the world. This is why our Imam, may Allah hasten his appearance, Al-Qa'im al-Mahdi, Ajlallahu Farajahu Sharif, he is going to establish justice in the world, but his title is Al-Mahdi. His role is Hujjatullah, because through purification and guidance of the heart, through establishing the proof of Allah over the heart and the mind and the soul, the Imam will allow justice to exist throughout the world. So I hope that it is clear why justice and injustice and jihad are concepts that pertain to the human soul primarily and first and foremost, and not just in the external world. Tomorrow, inshallah, we will continue this discussion and we will also examine where did this misconception come from in the Islamic world, and then we will move on to some of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.